So, if you're watching this explainer, I'm guessing you aren't just looking for another generic top 10 list of dating tips, right? You're looking for absolute, unfiltered clarity. Today, we're skipping the superficial internet checklists. We're going to dive deep into the actual clinical mechanics of how relationships really end. And we're doing this guided by over 16 years of real world clinical observations from licensed marriage and family therapist Figs O'Sullivan. Let's get right into it. I really want us to pause for a second and just sit with the weight of this quote because it's completely true. A relationship's death, it is almost never some sudden cinematic catastrophe where you just wake up one morning and boom, it's over. No, it's a slow, quiet accumulation of retreats. It's like a gradual dimming of the lights. The couples who actually end up in a therapist's office agonizing over whether to call it quits, they're usually dealing with something that has been quietly dying for a long, long time. The big explosion is really just the final symptom, absolutely not the root cause. And, there's a massive difference between just pointing out simple symptoms and truly understanding the underlying pathology of a failing bond. Literally anyone can point at a symptom and say, hey, we fight all the time. But if you're about to make one of the most consequential decisions of your entire life regarding your partnership, you need to understand the actual mechanics at play. We have to diagnose the disease itself, not just slap a Band-Aid on a sneeze. So, what is the first major clinical indicator that a bond is fundamentally broken? Let's take a look. Well, it all starts with this crucial concept, emotional disengagement. And honestly, people get incredibly confused by this one. They'll come into therapy, sit down, and proudly say, we don't even fight anymore. And they genuinely think that's progress. But here's the kicker. Healthy relationships actually require conflict. It's the natural, unavoidable friction of two entirely separate nervous systems trying to build a life together. When you stop fighting, it is rarely a sign of peace. It's resignation. It means a partner's nervous system has literally stopped treating the other person as someone even worth getting activated over. That's silence. It's not connection. It's just a profound, empty relief. Now, this naturally brings us to a vital distinction, one that research has actually proven to be the single strongest predictor of divorce. And that's the shift from frustration to contempt. Frustration targets behavior, right? It says, I'm really upset about what you just did. Anger is hot. And believe it or not, anger means someone actually still cares. But contempt, wow, contempt is pure ice. It targets character. It says, I am fundamentally disgusted by who you are. You see it in the eye rolling, the biting sarcasm, that cold sense of superiority. Once contempt takes root, it poisons absolutely everything. Studies even show it literally compromises the physical immune systems of the people living under it. It's a relationship killer for sure. So let's talk about the relationship dance and see how this toxicity creates a really dangerous archetype. In most relationships, you've got a pursuer who chases connection and a withdrawer who pulls back. That dance is pretty normal. But a massive flashing red flag is what we call the collapsed pursuer. This is a partner who hasn't packed their bags and left dramatically, but they have given up quietly, totally, and down to their very selves. They stop asking for what they need. They stop crying. And what makes this so incredibly dangerous is that to the withdrawing partner, it actually looks like things are getting better. They're thinking, oh, great, they finally calmed down. But the tragic reality, that partner has emotionally died inside the relationship, even though they're still physically sitting right there on the couch. Then on the flip side of that exact same dynamic, we have the drowning withdrawer. Often the pursuer thinks the withdrawer just doesn't care. They miss deadlines, forget plans. They seem completely checked out, but they're totally misinterpreting the signs. This partner isn't just ignoring you. Their nervous system has essentially shut down just to survive you. It's a protective measure. They construct this entirely parallel existence. No, they haven't physically left the house, but they've built a cozy little lifeboat of separate hobbies or a rich inner life, all while trapped inside a sinking ship. They've basically become a ghost in their own home. Okay, so here is a truly fascinating concept drawn straight from 16 years of clinical therapy. Relationships perish by certainty. Just think about that for a second. We almost always assume relationships die because of some massive betrayal, right? But they actually die when there is literally no curiosity left. It's that exact moment when one or both partners becomes absolutely 100% certain about who the other person is. He is always selfish. She is totally controlling. Guys, these aren't observations anymore. They are cold, immovable verdicts. And once that verdict is rendered, the relationship isn't just on trial, it's being sentenced. And where does this rock solid certainty come from? Clinicians call it the defended self. It's basically our psychological armor. When a relationship is circling the drain, this armor wants exactly one thing: confirmation. The defended self acts like this blindingly bright flashlight. You point it directly at your partner's flaws, and hey, they're human. So you are always going to find those flaws to build an airtight case. But because that flashlight is so incredibly bright, it blinds you to literally everything else in the room. You can't see the tenderness. You completely miss their subtle attempts at repair, and you make the very system you're both trapped in completely invisible. You literally only see a villain. Because of all this, the end often reveals itself super quietly in our day-to-day lives. We're not talking about grand, dramatic fantasies of running away. It's the incredibly mundane fantasies of autonomy, like vividly picturing yourself grocery shopping, completely alone and feeling remarkably peaceful about it. Or maybe it's somatic rejection, where your nervous system is just so honest that your body literally flinches when your partner tries to touch you. Sometimes it's reducing your partner to a flat, one dimensional antagonist in the stories you vent to your friends. Or, and this one is huge, maybe you realize your partnership is nothing more than a production for an Instagram audience, spending 40 minutes trying to capture that perfect couple selfie at brunch, only to realize that if no one were watching online, the relationship itself wouldn't even exist. Let's also look at how the failure of basic repair attempts accumulates damage over time. In a happy, functioning relationship, a couple naturally uses repair attempts, a quick joke, a gentle touch, a sincere apology, just to de escalate tension. But in a relationship that's actively ending, a repair attempt is made and it is immediately ignored or batted away. Over time, the rejected partner just stops reaching out entirely. It's exactly like a broken bone that keeps fracturing in the exact same spot because it was never properly set in the first place. Without that vital repair, the damage just compounds until the bone simply cannot heal anymore. So, the absolute crucial point we've been building towards in this whole explainer is this critical diagnostic pivot. Listen, not every single sign we've discussed today means it's totally beyond saving. You have to ask yourself one major question: is your relationship depleted or is it severed? A depleted relationship means you're both running on fumes, you're exhausted, but that underlying attachment, it is still intact. A severed relationship, however, means that attachment has been entirely cut. One or both partners has crossed an internal threshold from which there is absolutely no return. Knowing which state you're actually in changes literally everything about what you do next. I actually want you to mentally take this test right alongside me. Think about it. When you imagine your partner in pain, do you feel it with them, or do you just feel a flat nothing? If they magically woke up tomorrow completely changed, would something inside you light up, or is it honestly just too little, too late? But pay very special attention to the concept of grief here. Do you still feel grief about what you're losing? Notice that if there is still grief, there is still attachment. because grief is the absolute evidence of life. When the grief completely vanishes and is replaced by this flat, empty apathy, that is the clearest possible sign that it has truly ended. If you're evaluating all these heavy feelings, it really helps to use a clinical framework known as the sovereign us. Basically, try to think of your relationship not just as you and your partner, but as a third, entirely separate living entity with its own health, its own needs, and its own trajectory. And sometimes a really tough truth emerges. Sometimes what the sovereign us needs isn't for you to fight harder and drag it along on life support for another year. Sometimes what the relationship actually needs is for you to honestly recognize that it simply shouldn't continue in its current form. Now, for those of you who realize your relationship is depleted, but maybe not fully severed, it's so important to recognize that the window of time to revive it, it doesn't stay open forever. The longer contempt is allowed to fester, the longer a partner stays collapsed or submerged, the exponentially harder it becomes to rebuild those neural pathways of connection. Waiting for perfect clarity before you take action might feel like the safe route, but lingering in that uncertainty carries a profound cost. We have to remember choosing to wait is in itself a decision. I want us to sit with this deeply compassionate truth from the source material. As a society, we are heavily conditioned to view ending a relationship as this massive, shameful personal failure. But ending a diminishing system that is fundamentally breaking down both people, that is not a failure. It's an act of profound, radical honesty. In many cases, offering that clear-eyed truth is the absolute most loving and respectful final gift you could ever offer, both to yourself and to your partner. To wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with a final provocative thought. As you evaluate all the signs we've walked through today, I want you to really check in with where your decisions are actually coming from. Are you just holding on out of a pure fear of change? Are you acting from that defended self that desperately, stubbornly needs to be right? Are you operating from your clearest self, the part of you that can hold complexity, tolerate deep uncertainty, and still choose what is fundamentally true? So what is your clearest self telling you right now? If you want to work on this for real, try Figlet, my AI relationship coaching app. You can start for free, no credit card needed, at figlet.empathy.com.